welcome everybody. Welcome to this special edition of Ascended World podcast, the Collective Energy Share podcast and live stream. And this is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Avignone.
And we have two special guests on today, Sandy Anthony and Yashmin Wall. And because we wanted to bring on, we just came back from an awesome retreat in Glastonbury, UK. Most of us came back Sunday or Monday, or even Tuesday. Scattered. But there's so many things that happened, and Sarah and I haven't done this while we were away, so it was really good timing for us to come back and sort of give everybody a little bit of an update as to what's been going on, because we're sure everybody feels it, because everything we do collectively, everybody does, right, outside of space and time. So we wanted to also bring on whoever wanted to come on from the UK trip to talk about, some of the things that we experienced, some of the insights we got, some of the downloads, and we're continuing as we move forward. So thanks guys for joining, because there's so much to talk about.
Yes. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So we did, and we had a group for anybody. We had a group of 13, which was a very powerful group to have. It was a very powerful group. So, well, we're all very powerful, but it was just such a great collaboration. And of course, we came together to bring out some big old boom energetically. So what do you guys want to start with?
Okay, twist my arm.
Somebody
needs to jump in. Okay, so it was really prominent the entire trip that I so appreciate. And actually, it feels like the energy opened up even before the trip, like a couple of weeks beforehand. I started to feel shifting to prepare us for the trip, because I started to feel more lighthearted, more free, more energy, energies that aligned with the heart. And then and freedom and joy and childlike energy. And then we go there and all of that and just exploded. And it was everywhere we went. I felt that the pureness, purity of being oneself and embracing that, and just being able to let go and be free and not have a care in the world about it, be carefree. The joy that comes from that, because you can be authentic and feel the essence of your truth in that way, and feel so alive with all of that. And I felt, so a lot of childhood energy, joyfulness, the love, of course, the unconditional love expanding through the heart, which is, what the heart chakra is all about. And that's what Avalon and Glastonbury holds, that energy, that heart chakra expansion. And so I was really overjoyed by all of those experiences. And I felt a lot of the connection with nature. I felt the fairies and the unicorns and the goddesses, the angelic realm, a combination of all of it. And it came together in a way that I've never felt before. So it felt like this wholeness, of our individual aspects of ourselves, collecting these separate pieces of ourselves and really being able to bring them full forth in front and center, be able to see it in its purest form and really embody it and embrace that. And so I felt like the whole trip, except for that last day.
Well, in all honesty, we had a lot going on the whole trip. So, and yes, so there is a beautiful, everything is so heart-based, right, around that. And that's why they call it the heart chakra of the earth. But I know that with the shifts and everything, are starting to concern the third eye, which is a funny and very interesting and appropriate correlation. And we went there, and that it's funny because what I always watch are the bigger themes, right? So I watch the bigger themes of what all different people are doing with different kinds of practices. And it seems like this year has been a Glastonbury year for many, right? A lot of people have been drawn there. So funny, like last year I had gotten, and Sarah and I know we had talked about the um, feeling or seeing from the heart. And seeing from the heart is so very important. Acting from the heart, and we talk it all the time. But the thing is, really getting to a place of being it, right? So we talk it, and it's like a lot of like catchphrases and stuff like that. But when we get there, it's we're there, and it's called immersion retreat for that reason, so we can be immersed in that energy and not be distracted by the day-to-day life stuff, right? So, the intention is for us to just flow through it. And there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of walking. I think Sarah's bit told us, or whatever thing that you have. It was like 32 some odd miles or something, right?
Right. And that was before we got to the airport.
Yeah.
Not counting the run.
Right.
At 10 miles.
So, so like 32 miles we walked in a week, and so there's a lot of walking involved, and there's a lot of hills involved with that too. The tour is a lot of steps, as anybody can attest. But the way I always see it, and like how we do those retreats, whether it's Shasta or Glastonbury or any place, is that we have so much, and we've agreed to do such big things together, and we'll do it outside of space and time. But we also decide to come together physically in a group to really connect in and help to shift our part, that we agreed to do. And it's such big energy. Sometimes all you can do is move. All you can do is walk. All you can do is, do something, because it helps, because it's a different level of energy than we typically embody. And so it makes it a lot easier to process and allow things to flow through. So what happens then, after a period of time, is that things start to shake up to the top, right? And we try to deny them, and it's like, nope, that's not what you're here to do, because when we're here to shift in a certain way, then everything is just going to be puked up, to resolve, to be completed, so that you can move into the next thing. So one of the things I want to talk about is like what we had noticed, the interesting thing about that overlay thing. Sarah, do you want to talk about that?
Overlay thing.
Overlay. At the beginning of the week, the duplicity of the sounds.
Oh, yeah. It was, I noticed that in the house, in pauses in the conversation, and, when we'd be doing meditation or whatever, that I kept hearing like mumbling or sounds, thinking that someone was in another room of the house. And I kept looking out there and counting, and it was like, no, there's no one unaccounted for. And that went on for a few days. And I don't remember if I mentioned it to you first or Kathy first, but I mentioned it, and I guess it was Kathy, because she said she hadn't noticed it. And I was like, it felt like it felt like another timeline, and that it was one of the timelines where we had met the same group of people to do the same things and didn't do things differently, and we cycled back around to repeat this again. And that this was the next time, and it was our opportunity to do things differently. So then I mentioned it, I think, to you, Angela, next, and we started talking about it. And it seemed like it was us, but it was like 5-minute lag or 5-second lag behind where we were.
Yeah, somewhere around there, because that was the really funny part of it. Because when you brought it up to me, I was like, oh yeah, like I just sort of had noticed that, like there were a couple times I had heard laughing, or like, and it sounded like our group, and I'd go into a room and there's nobody there, and I was like, that's interesting.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. I hadn't really, like put anything to it. When you brought that up, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And as we brought it up later in the week, like to different people, like they're like, oh, I'm having the same experience, or I'm having a version of the same experience. And then because there were 4 of us that slept in a yurt outside the house. had the outdoor bathroom building. And that was the funniest thing was when I would like the couple of because I would wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom like once and I'd go to the bathroom and come back and go back into bed and then I'd hear myself walking again, like literally physically hear somebody walking from the bathroom to the door again and then it would stop. And it was like, yeah, like literally, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, if that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was a little disconcerting because it's like we could almost hear an echo or feel an echo of ourselves that was
Well,
there.
and even the motion sensor light
Yeah.
played into that. Because
Yeah.
you come in, you go back to bed, the light would go out, then the light would come right back on, but nobody
Yes.
would open the door.
Like I would be in the bathroom and I would hear like you guys closing the door and then the light will go on again. And I'm like, who's outside again?
Right.
The
So
bathroom door closed a lot. Even when we were
yeah,
doing our group meditations, I would hear it open and close, and there's nobody in there.
Yeah, that
yeah,
happened in my meditation. I was like, okay, it sounded twice. And there was no wind really, and the door was already closed. So it kept making that sound. I'm like, who's there?
so the thing was, so the more we felt into it, the more I had to do with this. Like, then at some point, I don't even remember when that came to me. It was like, no, it's not overlay. It's not a different time. Well, it's not a different timeline. It's actually an overlay of the old timeline, and the timeline that you're predominantly focusing on right now is ending, and a new one is starting at the same time.
Right.
Um, And so it was interesting because a lot of us had these weird feelings before we went of dying, right? Of not coming back. Like, and it was really like a concrete.
Yeah, huge. It was huge.
Yeah.
It was almost like telling your family goodbye and you weren't going to see them again. And I kept hearing to myself,
Yep.
nothing's ever going to be the same again.
Right.
And I was very tempted to call them. We'll talk to my kids in person because they're here, and even call Ron to say, I'm not sure if I'm coming back, so I just want to say a few things to you and get, just in case to cover it because it was that strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, I had an 11:11 flight on the way home, which could be a gateway there or a gateway there, right? Could go either direction.
Or both.
Or both, true. But that's
Well,
all.
I know that any energy that I tapped into at all the sites we went to, I felt a completion of the history that it held.
Yeah.
And that it was like, oh, finally we can let go of this. Finally we can put this to rest. Finally we can be done with the scenarios and the whether it was suffering, whether it was oppression, whatever that energy, it's like we can be done with that now. We don't need to support that anymore. So I felt that played into the timeline ending and a new one beginning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and as many of us as felt that ending, right? There were others that were getting the message of rebirth. So it's funny because it was like, well, which is two sides of the same coin, right?
Right.
And so once we looked at that, it was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. And then because for a couple of days, like for a day or two in there, we started getting this little friction, right? Like people started getting a little irritated. It was just a little like something, and it was like some like friction of something just sort of rubbing together that was not quite in sync. And that's when we realized what was going on. So when we set that up to intend it, to assimilate it and integrate it, that's when the fears came up, right? That's when some of the deeper things started coming up because it was like, well, to let go of this old timeline is to let go of me that I've known.
Right.
And to embrace this new timeline is to put a different form of me here, right? So it's sort of like a walk-in a way, but it's just a walk-in of a different part of your consciousness to what's the word I'm looking for? To deal with basically be the one that leads the consciousness here in the next phase for all of for us individually and collectively. So that means there's a death in there, right? There's a death to a lot of things and Sarah and I have talked about this many times over the past whatever that is.
Right.
on how we're being pushed to let go of these things that are hidden in the cracks and crevices. So it's like, okay, we've done layers and layers and layers of that. And then when we get to the place of, oh, I think we just lost Sarah. When we get to the place of, when we get to the place of saying this timeline is over and done with, we can't hide anything anymore, right? So we think we're great, I'm great, I don't have, I don't have anything hidden anymore. But then when it's like ending, it's like, oh wait, I really have to let go of the stuff that I'm hiding, even for myself. And that's where that stuff started coming up.
Yes.
Like
and
whatever, and everybody had something.
Right. And that's where that purity energy comes to play, because when we're in that authentic place of just being purely who we are in every way, the wholeness aspect, that allows that energy to come up of the old self, the old me, to cleanse and purify those vibrations that aren't really aligned with the purity of ourselves. So that's why it's a dual fold process, the allowing of the new and the death to the old. And we have to do both.
Yeah. So I feel like it's going to affect everybody. Well, it's affecting everybody already. But I think it's going to be a little bit of transition time for many.
Right.
Going to be a lot of deaths of different things that are going to be
right. And I think that what we're seeing is that as this completion starts to filter in around everything we do, that level of trust has to be there, or you can't let go.
Yes.
From the fear.
Or you can let go, or you're going to be forced to let go, because there's not going to be
right. So true.
It can be flowing and easy, or it can be traumatic, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
So that's the thing, and so that's where there's a lot of friction going on in the collective, because there's the, oh no, and it's not, like I said, it's not just us, it's all the other groups that, we've been called to do the same work outside of space and time, right, recently. It's like more and more of us are, committing to the new timeline, which means that the old one is becoming more and more faded, and it's fading more quickly, right? Then those still trying to hold on to that are really panicking, and then there's like collective stuff, there's individual stuff that's really intense, and I feel like it's going to get even more intense before it starts to smooth out. Some people are going to be like, what's going on? I just don't understand. Like, it's been crazy up to now. Like, it feels like it's going to get even more so.
Yeah.
Right. Laurel says good morning.
Morning, Laurel.
Good morning.
Morning, Laurel.
The commitment, it's been, for me, especially this morning, this awareness of the shifting in commitments. For me, the commitments that I had before, that I held myself accountable and that I couldn't let go of, and now I'm seeing them shift based on what my heart it's telling and asking and guiding me to do. So I have felt that very strongly, letting go of the old commitments that I had held myself accountable for based on judgments and all that, and now how it's like really, but it's being in a gentle way, if that makes sense. And
it says gentle, but actually it's funny you say gentle, but to me, the word that comes to my mind is fierce. Like to be self-supportive in a fierce way, like.
And I've never found that fierceness as easy as it is now.
Yeah.
I guess that the gentleness is like the easy part of it, but it's fearlessly, because it's like it's like no fear on that anymore.
And no question.
Yeah, and it's like the gentleness you're referring to, Yashmin, I feel it like effortless. So it's like fierceness, like Sarah was saying, easier than ever. This fierce energy of really stepping into our truth, and it's effortless now, where before it was a struggle. It was like, ugh. And now it's like, oh yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, and there's like a, and somebody want to call it, I don't even like using the word boundary because to me it always means like separation.
Hmm.
Excuse me, but it is being strong in your being to say this is not for me, right? So there's no
Right.
like being flashy anymore. Like I had something come up yesterday that it was like it was something that came up and I was like, yeah, nope. Like, and it was just no. Like there was like no like, and then there was a part of me, like an old part of me that started, oh, really? Are you being right? Like, like what is that ego or whatever? And it was just like, no, it's just no, it's just no, right? and and it had to do with committing to my own nourishment, and there's a lot of integration going on right now, like from our trip,
Right.
Yes.
and so I had sort of made this week a lighter week on purpose because I knew I was guided to, and I knew that I'd end up having to have some integration stuff. And there was stuff that came up, like somebody wanted to come and stay, and it was like a last second thing, and I was like, no, nope, not a good time, sorry, because I need to do me right now. And
Right.
so it was, and I noticed it, like, and it's not that I ever have a problem with that, but I might have hesitated a little bit before. And yesterday was just like, no. And that's the fierceness is like, no, this is me. This is my space. And you can do it with love. That's the gentleness, right? It's doing it with love, but being really strong about it.
Right. Right.
And no like hesitation or doubt or whatever.
Yeah,
Well,
so I
and
think, yeah.
the natural inclination is when you step back into something that has familiarity, like coming back into your relationships after being absent, and it's like everything almost is well, we pick right back up where we were, and the answer now is actually no, we don't.
No.
We're on a whole different footing from this point forward.
Well, it's not picking back up, it's picking forward up, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
On
Yeah.
a completely new playing field, which some might be distressed about that, but at the same time, I'm like, but they chose it. At some level, they've chosen it to do it this way.
Right. Right.
That's us doing us. That's me doing me, you doing you, us doing us. That it must be that way. That's authenticity. And anything that's not that is not authentic. It's not pure. We have to. And the
So,
other will just catch up, when they can see this.
well, because we're still catching up to ourselves. Like we are
Right.
still like, and we were there,
Right.
Hmm.
So like at the collective level, it's like, well, there's even more of us now, like more and more of us who are committing to this new timeline, this new space, this new creation. And it's because we have, and so I felt more into that in meditation yesterday. And, we've had a number of years now where we've been collapsing timelines into this one as more, this one that we've had is a more central timeline. So it's almost like all of them have like they've now collapsed the old ones into that one, and now we're letting go of that, which is why it's such a big thing to us because it's like, oh my God, I'm like letting go of everything. What does that mean? Like, who am I? What am I going to do? And like everything feels different. Everything like okay, you reassess every relationship, every interaction, every choice, in what we're doing, in what we're being, and and the ego gets a little nervous about them. Well, not a little, a lot.
A lot.
Well, and I think that every time that we take that step forward like that, it's a like you said, the reassessment of every relationship, everything, and even the relationship with ourselves, because along with this expansion comes the expansion in our self-love, which then leads to a new level of authenticity, which then cycles us back around to just that ever increasing self-love to get to that place of the wholeness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where we can just be in the purity of all of that, and that just being energy helps us create, which is in alignment and resonant with all that we are, of who we are. And this brings to mind, there's so many people that perceive this kind of standing in our truth as selfish, and that you're checking out and you don't care about me, or you don't care about us, you don't care about this, that, or the other. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It's actually just the opposite. Because when we step into ourselves first and, full self-love, self-connection, self-nurturing, self-honoring, then that's who we really are. And we just weren't being who we really are before. We were playing the game in separation, which is so different. And that's what the Trinity One class is all about, right? Is that first step of remembering this, that it's not selfish, self-centralization.
Yes, and we don't realize how much, we don't consciously realize how important that is in being central to everything else, right? So, because the other thing that's coming to resolution is that dependence on outside stuff to value who we are, right? To give away our power to things, to say, okay, this book tells me what I don't know. This person can tell me what I don't know. This tool, this toy, or whatever you want to call it, will tell me what I don't know. And it's like, well, actually, do. And we've been talking about it, but now it's time to be it, right? And to really become independent on ourselves, because with everything changing, the best knowledge is going to come from inside. And things that worked a week ago or 2 days ago or 2 hours ago outside of us will probably not work again in a random, presentation. So because
Well, and the tools will be going away.
Yeah.
We'll be the only tool.
That's right.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Because we won't need it.
Yes.
What?
I said, because the tools don't really exist. They're just an illusion.
Exactly.
It's an illusion, right?
So,
Right.
We get into this whole, it's almost like there's a frenzy of all these great tools and toys, what I call toys, right? To help us remember our own power as how we allow things to have power to reflect back to us. But then it's to get to a point to say, don't need that. It was great. It's fun. And I got this anyway. Right.
Right.
So Sarah and I did a impromptu share yesterday. What was it even about?
So yesterday.
I guess it was the allowing ourselves to fully step away from the old and into the new. And what was the?
Oh, because we were still holding on to something. There was
Right.
a little something, right? Because we sit there, we nod and we agree and we say, oh yeah, absolutely, and then we go back to the same stuff, right? Or we start to go into the same habits, and
Right.
or we'll allow some of the same habits. So the thing is to have that full consciousness and observance in every moment, to be what we can't even see we're going to be because we have no context for it yet. So it's scary because it's like walking off a cliff into the clouds, and we're like, what am I doing now? Right?
Right.
I mean, lucky for me, for the last 10 years, I've been pushing myself into the clouds all the time, but every time it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. So we're collectively in this place where it's even bigger, and you can feel the energy of that change. And we've been going through this at least. This whole year has been tremendous in that kind of transformation for everybody. I mean, there's almost nobody I know who hasn't had huge changes in their life.
Yes.
Right.
And something that Wayne Dyer says that I absolutely love, one of his quotes is, believe it and then you will see it. It's not see it and believe it. We need to believe it first, and then it shows up for us, and we can magnify that trust and really step into what's next with more joy. Love that. And as far as the this energy that we're all talking about right now, how it appeared to me and in Glastonbury was the strength of the goddess. Like the goddess was showing up so many times for me over and over. And I know we're balancing the goddess with the god energy, the feminine with the masculine. And yet the goddess was showing up over and over again as that purity of strength and activating this remembrance within us of what you just said, that we have it all within us. And different, she showed herself in different faces, including the Lady of Avalon at Chalice Well, and each one had a different energy. And to me, that was just like, wow, like it's time to really take the reins back of our strength, our power, our purity, but in unconditional love and balance with the masculine.
Well, and not even in balance, just in wholeness and stuff.
Right, true.
Yeah, it's almost like a creation of the allness that has no distinction of masculine or
Masculine
feminine.
and feminine, yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
very strong. I felt that.
Good. Mm-hmm.
An integration of all.
Yeah,
Right.
and when it brings back, it makes me think of, did y'all see that movie, The Shack?
Yeah.
Hmm.
You saw that movie, Yashmin?
I saw a very, very long time ago.
Oh, well, it was a couple of years ago it came out.
It's not wasn't it an older version of it?
Oh,
The
I
Shack?
don't think so. I thought it was a newer one. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, the cool part about the movie The Shack is that the way God presents itself to the individual changed depending on what the individual needed to see, right? To help them with whatever it is. So one day it was a woman, one day it was a man, like the different faces, different forms, or whatever. And that's that wholeness. That's the wholeness of access within us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because there's so much in translation, and Sarah and I got into this conversation yesterday. This is another thing that sort of was a bomb that came into me yesterday morning. So things that we have done, like look at all the holy books, right? The Bible, the Quran, whatever, right? All of them. Any of them and all of them. Where the vast majority of them were passed down orally, right? And this came up also in Glastonbury. We had this conversation several times. They were passed down orally for a while. Then they were written down by multiple authors, and they were, translated and edited and whatever. And then as other things came into play, then they inserted different things, whatever. And so a lot of the original meaning for all of them have really dissipated or been, I don't want to say bastardized, but you know what I'm saying. It's been very watered down. Okay. And so, but the thing is, the more you start looking at things, like even if you look at things in the Bible, right? The more you start looking at things, is like you can see if you took a step back how it originally meant to go inside because we are God.
Right.
Because we have all the answers and we have all the power. And then like step by step, like the translation didn't work, the editing didn't work, or it just worked in the way that we intended it so that we could experience this kind of separation.
Right.
And so it's fully taking about those reins, and it's stepping out of what we call the, like the matrix. It's stepping out of the matrix and realizing not only is it not like corrupt, like I said, the funny thing is when we went out there yesterday and we were doing our share, I saw us, I was like, well, we wanted clarity on what the thing is that's holding us into this, we're still like struggling a little bit to move forward into this new state. And it's like this perception that, like I saw, was like the perception that like the Matrix, right, in the movies about the Matrix, how, well, the Matrix is like what we make it and it's beautiful and whatever, and then we step out of the Matrix and this is ugly, barren, limitation, nothing, right? And there's a fear in there for us that that's what's going to happen because we've loved this whole multiverse of separation that we've created. So instead of realizing, oh no, it's even bigger and even better, but there's this fear, the stuff that we're not letting go of, fear of like, no, I still want still want my steak. Like, remember in the Matrix where I was like, oh, well, I know the steak doesn't really exist, but it's, it's delicious and I can get whatever. But it's like those kind of perceptions, I think, that are part of what's holding us back.
And the guilt for having investing so much of who we thought we were into this creation, which really doesn't exist.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. It exists just as much as it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
So, yeah, and not only that, but we also have a bajillions of other creations that are amazing, you know, phenomenal and incredible and whatever.
Yeah.
But this whole shift of it's this like whole like no, I can still hold on to this. This is still comfortable for me, right? This is what's going to be going on. This is what I feel like is going to be coming to fruition for everybody. Is no, I still like this, or knowing something is going on underneath and judging it within yourself because you're having it go on, right? So Sandy, that was part of your thing, right? So it's like, and that's part of everybody's, because that's the guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I did this, and oh no, because I should do this, right? Here's a big thing that's going on right now. I am a light worker. And I'm not saying this to be judgmental, but this goes on with a lot of people, right? I only work in the light. And the light means I have to be happy and sweet and bubbly all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any dark, right?
And giving.
What was that?
And giving, always giving.
Giving, like all I aspire to be is the light, when that's like a hidden externalization of valuation by saying no, because I want everybody to think that of me because I don't think that of myself at some level, right?
Yeah. It's like overcompensating for the dark that we have because we're afraid to look at it.
Right. And people they get really bent out of shape about the term darkness. And I'm like, well, but that's because we're judging it. So that's a judgment, which is ego-based, right? But what if we, instead of saying, and I was saying this to somebody at the retreat, we got into a conversation about it. What if instead of saying light and dark, we said red and blue? So when you say red and blue,
not a big deal.
It's like, oh, it's just different colors on the same spectrum, right? Light and dark, different shades in the same spectrum, because without the dark there is no light. Without the light there is no dark, right? That they were created in duality. So that's something that's it's a big hidden one, right? Because the more we go along in this, and the more we're saying, oh, well, look at, and we don't even realize at some point the ego starts to hold on to that and say, oh, look at how light I am. Look at how, glorious and good. And those are all judgments, right?
Yep.
And so then if we have a dark thought or a dark moment or anger or fear or sadness, then we judge that within ourselves, like, oh no, because if I let anybody see this, or I let myself even see it, then that means I can't be all light and good and whatever and
right.
evolved, right?
Well,
the whole thing is to just observe it and let it flow through, to let it reassimilate as a wholeness thing.
And if you look at it in terms of the colors black and white, it's allness and nothingness. And so it's really everything.
It's really the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
The full spectrum. I love, Angela, how you shook things up by buying the dark oracle cards. So we all had to look at darkness within us.
Yeah.
That was powerful. It wasn't what we really were asking for, but we needed it. It was powerful.
Well, and the thing is, again, it's a tool. And I was like, well, I don't know. Something drew me to that. And I was like, okay, whatever. And it's not something that I use the cards all the time or anything. But yeah, and then everybody pulled one. And it was like everybody got a little bit shaken by whatever they pulled. And yet it's funny because in observance to all of it, including myself, in observance to everyone, it was perfect in one way or another for what they're experiencing. And that even if they didn't recognize it within themselves, I'm like, oh, I see that totally, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's and it's like, well, looking at that, and even it was funny because I hadn't even looked at them since I got back, and then yesterday I'm still putting my stuff away, and so I was putting them away, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just pick one, right? And it was about a half hour or an hour before I got on with Sarah, and what came up was guilt, which I thought was, and it ended up being perfect for what we were talking about, this like guilt of of what she was talking about, and like not feeling the guilt for being fierce in your wholeness, right? Not feeling guilty, like letting yourself be that fierceness, which is funny because I think that's where the Lyran energy has been coming for like a while now. I don't know about you guys, but for me, like lions and cats and whatever, that kind of energy, and that what's typically behind that is that fierceness and that, you know, um, yeah, that's pretty much the only word that comes to mind. But it's that standing in your own truth without apology, right? Without guilt,
Yes.
and standing in your own power without that. And also in that, being unapologetic about your own journey.
Right. Right.
Right. So I think, Sandy, what your thing was great, what happened there on the last day. I think it was perfect for everybody because it was such a beautiful, I know it didn't feel that way for you, but it was such a beautiful representation. It was such a beautiful representation of of having that stuff come up that we have hidden, that we judge ourselves for feeling. And it's like funny because then like it's so interesting to think of the layers. So we have an anger, or we have a sadness, or we have something, right? A fear. And we're like, oh, I can't have any fear because I'm this, right? And
Right.
we sort of hide it, or no, I'm supposed to be further along, right? I'm supposed to be further along here. I'm supposed to be, which we all know is like a total key to the ego when we
Right.
Right. Yes.
right?
And supposed to be detached by now because
Right.
I've been working on it for so long.
Right.
Come on.
Right. So I'm going to shove that in the corner because I'm going to hide. I'm like, go away. Go away.
I won't look at you. So, yeah, just stay out of my life.
Right. Except it comes back around and goes, okay, you want to be fierce? Here's my fierceness because I've got to come out to the surface so that you can look at it and let it flow through without that judgment, right? Or have the explosion that you need to have so that it'll finally come out so that you can finally see it in a different light to say, oh, okay, I can just observe it and let it go through.
Yes, because in the process of having that explosion, I was judging a lot. And yet, but that's what needed to be purified and cleansed to come out, to get that fucking shit out of me is what I said that night. And I told some people before this trip, somewhere, probably months ago, that I pay a lot of money to go on these retreats to have my fucking shit pulled out of me. Because I know I don't do it all on my own.
Yeah.
Because it's hidden. It's hidden so deeply.
And that's what the immersion's about, because it just comes together and it's like a shaking thing. Like it starts to shake up in frequency the hidden stuff that doesn't align, right? And you can't, when you commit to that and we're all together, and it becomes even more powerful collectively, when we're in that space together and we commit to it together, then it's almost like, okay, well, it's just going to get puked up, right? So people say, oh, well, why would you want that? And it's like, well, I would rather do it in this beautiful, heart-centered place where I can walk miles and miles and just take in this amazing beauty and energy and allow that remembrance of it to flow through me.
Yes, exactly.
So that I can allow it, I can feel safe enough to allow it to come up and out.
Bingo.
Yes.
And with heart-centered soul family who has your back and every step of the way.
Yeah.
Best way to do it.
And to be committed in that energy is phenomenally powerful because it helps us it just helps us to do, like, I'm sure that what it took to bring that up, Sandy, for you, well, for us, right? For you, representing us,
Mm-hmm.
as I
Right.
said there, thank you, Sandy, for taking that on for us.
That's what I told you right away. I'm like, thank you for taking it.
Yes, I know. I think you all told me that thing, and you're welcome. I think,
but,
I think.
but, um, but just like we think that it was one thing, but that was a lot of dark stuff, deep, dark stuff that
That's what
came up.
it felt like. That's what it felt
And
like. That's,
like, think about it. Okay, so it was uncomfortable. It was a couple hours of crying, right?
hmm,
And like really deep crying, sobbing
really
stuff.
feeling like shit. Yeah.
But like that in itself, like it was probably, I can't even, like, billions of little things that we were hiding in the crevices that came up all in one shot. And that was
Right.
probably the easiest, most flowing way to do it when we're all sitting there in a space of love with each other, right?
Hmm.
To be able to nurture that and allow it to come out so that we can resolve it
Yes.
and look at it in our own mirror as well so that we then move forward into this new space. So, again,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. And it was brewing all afternoon. It started with that grand adventure Kevin, Jennifer Polanski, and I took to go downhill on the tour hill to look for the labyrinth, and I lost my footing very, very gently. The foot losing the footing was not a major thing. It was what I fell onto.
Fell
My
into
hand,
the metal.
my whole right hand and the top of my left, but I think that's just probably because I did this. Oh my goodness. And I didn't know, it didn't seem too bad at first. I get stung, but like, of course, the day it got worse and worse. And then by the time I got home and it was almost dinner time, I really felt like crap. Like went into a depressed state. Didn't want to talk. I was really withdrawn and I felt things bubbling up and I still didn't relate it to something bigger collectively. It just felt like it had to do with the stinging hand. And that was just the trigger point.
Right.
So it's interesting how we get messages that way, right?
Also,
And
we
it,
force ourselves into it like, all right, if you're not going to look at it that way, we'll just have to force it out this way.
exactly, exactly. And talk about, like you said, Soul Trip was so joyful and fun and filled with freedom and innocence and purity. And even me sliding down that slope was that energy. So it was a very graceful and easy way to experience a huge collective purging. And it only lasted 2 hours, like you said. So that's not bad. That's a judgment. That's okay. I accept that.
I mean, in all honesty, it could have been far worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It lasted for weeks.
And yeah, it could have lasted for weeks. It could have been debilitating, where you ended up in bed, right? Where we all ended up in bed, or hurting ourselves, or whatever, to trigger ourselves to be able to do that. But we're able.
Hmm.
And
So
being
the
able
thing
to do
is,
it all together.
we can do it without even having to be physically together. It seems to be easier for us and getting our minds out of the way when we do it, even if we're not conscious of it at the time. So, like, part of the commitment is to allow that stuff to come up once as well, and to be able to see it and recognize it as something that doesn't serve us, right? And sometimes you need to cry it out. Sometimes you need to, like, yell it out. Sometimes you just need to be free and let it flow forward. My biggest thing is, like, for me is, and I had this come up a couple weeks before we went, is when it comes up out of nowhere, because it does, especially when you stay in this flow, right? It does often come out of nowhere. I'm just like observant to it and like, okay, so I will let this flow, and I'm going to be cranky and bitchy and whatever, let it, but I'm not going to take it out on anybody else. I'm just going to let it come out. Like, that's the biggest
Right.
thing cognizant of, right? I'm not going to yell at other people. I'm not going to, I'm not going to project it onto them. That's the commitment in a higher consciousness. That's the difference.
Yes, absolutely. Right. In fact, there was a part of me that was like, I didn't want to like hold back the joy of the group. That's why when I was feeling at the end of our sessions, remember I said, I just feel like crying right now because it was building and building, building. Now, I don't think I could hold it in any longer. I really feel like crying, and you gave me permission to do that.
So go and cry. So cry.
So what? Go cry. But I didn't want to hold you all back from experiencing a beautiful last evening. That's why I went to the bedroom to be by myself, so I didn't take it all out on you. And then it was so beautiful that y'all came in there to support me and hug me and be with me through this purging, because I did really need that. Yeah, I didn't know that I needed
And you also allowed the rest of us that are going through similar situations to let that out too. So it wasn't like you were by yourself. We were all in it together, and it was as sad you might have feel, or even the judge that you were having, oh, I don't want to ruin this. It was so powerful and beautiful because we were one in
Yes,
that moment, allowing all that release, and it was not just it was all of us, and it was incredible.
it was incredible.
So
So thank you for all.
thank you.
Thank you for all allowing me to express myself
Yeah.
and to be judgmental and yell it out.
Well, and sometimes you have to hear yourself say it, right? Sometimes you have to
Hmm.
hear yourself say, I should do this or I shouldn't do this. And you're like, oh, wait a second, that's a judgment. Like what? Like what? Like what am I holding myself to that's not relevant anymore?
Right.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And this,
I knew it was BS, and I just needed you guys to say it with me.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's great because it helps us. Sometimes it helps us to just hear it, and say, oh, right. Yeah, so look at that. Like the ego has been holding this down for how long, and it's just going to explode now because it doesn't serve me, and I'm like 95% over here, and I've got this 5% that's dragging me down. It doesn't matter if it's 5%, 2%, or 98%, because if it's dragging you down, it's still dragging you down. And so that's a big thing too. And I can't even, like, it's really challenging to even, like, it's like little things like relationships that we allow to continue in our reality that just don't match or align with us, right? That
Right.
drag us. It's jobs, it's where we live, it's situations, it's all kinds of things that we say, oh, well, it goes back to that whole precious thing, right? No, but this is my precious, and I'm not even going to acknowledge that. I'm just going to put it over here because somehow I believe it serves me because what? Sometimes it's something as simple as it allows me to hold myself back, right? Which sounds ridiculous,
Well,
but
or if you look at it from the perspective of it's little things that you choose to give your power away to and then deny that.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
And every little bit taken away from who you really are adds up
it
Yeah.
does.
and incongruent.
Yes. In fact, I got
Because
into a conversation right when we got home with
yeah,
somebody, and the energy was just like, oh my God, like I put up with that before. How could I put up with that before? Like, not anymore. Just a whole
Right.
different perspective.
and that's okay. Like that's the thing that many people, well, isn't that ego, whatever. It's like if you are in your state of being, if something serves the moment or doesn't, right? Or serves you in that state of being. And if it's either not even, all right, let's not even say serves you. Let's say is aligned with that wholeness and being, right?
Right.
If it's anything that is not aligned in that wholeness and being, it does not need to exist in your reality.
Right. Doesn't warrant your attention.
No. And it's this continuation that we do all the time is, oh no, I have to be this kind of role in this kind of situation, or I still have to be this way with these people or this person, my kids, my spouse, my whatever, my boss. You don't. If it doesn't align with being whole as who you are in wholeness, then it's okay to change it to align with you, and either it changes and adjusts or it goes away.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
It's okay.
And that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
What do we
So
have left to do to
whatever,
fully
what was it?
step into this?
Whatever it is, and maybe that's all we do is okay. Whatever we have left to do to step into this, let it go, let it be, and let's commit to it. I think that's
And do new. Like we said, that was one of our themes. Do new. Go home and do new.
and really stay observant as to what that is, right? Because really being observant to that is this: I am not just the light, because if I'm just the light, then I'm denying 50% of me.
Right. Well, and if you look at the premise of Trinity of the alignment of thought, word, and deed, every time we step into a new level of authenticity, it's a new level of thought of that alignment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it becomes more and more encompassing, which becomes more and more authentic, which goes back to that alignment of thought, word, and deed.
Right.
I mean, it all just, I
Spiral.
won't say it feeds it, but it's more than that. It nurtures it. It's exponential each time we come to a new level.
Right, because Trinity's evolving as we're evolving.
Yeah. Well, I don't even like the thing about Trinity is that's a tool too, right? At some point, it's just it's all about us back into our own.
Right. We
The
are
whole time,
evolving, period.
we are the consciousness. We are divine consciousness. We are
Right.
the whole. And it's existing and being in that all the time. So whatever it is for us to be there, to commit to it, and it sounds like an easy little thing. It's a big step. It's a big jump off the cliff.
Right.
Commit to it and be fierce with it.
Right.
Yeah, because it feels like you're floating in thin air.
Yeah. And I feel like that word fierce is really important in here because it is really time to take it by the horns and to proceed differently.
Agreed.
So yesterday we were talking, Sarah and I did the thing about having the clarity, and I really still think we need to have that clarity to, to set ourselves so that we have the conscious clarity of what it is to do that and be that, well, to be that, right, and to do from that.
Right.
In everything, in every day, in every moment, in every interaction, in every part of ourselves, so that we can shift with this new timeline. I don't even like calling it a timeline because it's something else and I can't quite get the word for it yet.
Right.
New existence. Be able to do it easily and quickly and as smoothly as possible in a way that's based in joy, no more suffering,
Right.
and
Right.
wholeness and love and expansion. Because when we're in the wholeness, there's no need for actually once we're in the wholeness, there's no even perception of suffering because everything just is.
Yeah.
So that whatever it is for us to be there and committing, let's commit to that and to clear the path to allow ourselves to do that, whatever that takes, with ease and flow.
Right.
I mean, because it's funny, and then it's always a relative thing too. Because what happened with you, Sandy? Like I still maintain it was ease and flow for the amount of stuff that I know.
Oh, yeah.
Could have
It's
been worse.
relative grace and ease.
I mean, that's why people end up getting in car accidents. They end up in the hospital. They end up falling and breaking a limb. They end up doing all these things. So they have their entire world collapse on them because it's that denial that finally adds up.
Right. This was the condensed and accelerated version of getting with grace and ease.
Yes. So let's go out and just do all that, shall we?
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Well, that was only 10 minutes. It felt like it was like an hour. It's like
Deep.
very deep.
Cool. Something I saw was a replica of what I saw in our Saturday morning meditation. There's like a mirror here and our reflections of all of us in the mirror. And so representing the whole, and then a platter underneath the mirror, and our hands holding the platter, and that represented us, and us handing over us. So we're handing each other to each other, handing me over to me, or us to us collectively, to be able to step into all these things we're talking about, taking the reins back. And I felt, but this time I felt the fierceness come through in the mirror, our reflections in the mirror, and courage and strength in the hands as we're passing that baton. So cool.
The term that came to me in the very beginning was fiercely original. And I kept thinking original, and I thought, oh, origin. Back to our origin, back to who we really are.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I saw something like that, but it was funny. As soon as I closed my eyes, it was, Yashmin, you and I talked about this the other day, the dragon that seemed to have been prominent. The dragon that was prominent all through the trip. That's the fierceness. It's like, oh yeah, don't even, because they're like, go even more so than the lion. It's like the fierceness of the dragon that's not scary. It's just to be whole is to be love and fear, to be love and fierce simultaneously, right?
That's what I kept listening. Like I heard fierce love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was this whole integration of that, to remember, like to say, okay, because we're saying it, there's no light without the dark. But it's also like all of those things are all part of the whole too. And it's allowing them to all come together to help serve us in that new creation. Yeah, the fiercely original origin. That was nice. And I saw a bunch of stuff, but I can't tell you what it was because I went so far out there. It's like, yeah, did a lot come back. So, so thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, good
It's
to
lovely.
yeah, good to have a bunch of us. That was just a great. I love the energy of being able to immerse ourselves together like that. It's always an incredible experience. And I know we're going to be processing this and integrating it for a while. And like I said, I sort of see it like that overlapping, ending, beginning thing going on, and accelerated. And yet there's going to be a little bit of, I want to say echo because that's what comes to mind, but residual of, like getting that stuff resolved and lined up so that we can collectively as the whole consciousness of this move into what's next.
Right.
We might want to do a take 2 of this new version as it comes through. As we process.
Wait.
Yep.
So thank you everybody for joining us for this special edition of the Extended World. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Avignone.
And with Yashmin Wall and Sandy Anthony. So have a great week. Sit in this, see how it feels, and then we'll see you back next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
you.
Bye.